Boom covers halftime live wild card weekend Saturday. It's Raiders Bengals Cincinnati, a 20-13 lead that got a little bit of an assist from the referees there. We'll get to that and more in just a second. Some numbers for the second half coming out shortly. I'm going to talk through both sides before we get to the second half numbers. But there's also a prop that's jumping out to me. So in terms of I guess what we've seen in that first half, if we're looking at the Cincinnati Bengals, well, it's a team that didn't punt the entire first half. They've been able to move the football up and down the field with relative ease. 5.9 yards per play, 7.3 per pass, 4.1 per rush. Pretty average numbers for the Bengals overall offensively, but it's been in the red zone where they've had to sort of tighten up a bit. They've got into the red zone 4 different times, converted just 2 of those, and a lot of people are going to be watching that the broadcast skipped over till last second, saying that, well, probably should have just been 1 of the 4 that were ultimately converted. The whistle blows on the touchdown to Boyd, and by NFL rule, when a whistle blows, even if it's inadvertently during the play should be dead from that spot. So that touchdown should have been taken off the board. The referees review it internally on the field. They switch it to a touchdown. So a bit of a controversial call there working in favor of the Bengals. But what's really standing out here is what's entirely going on with this pass rush for the Raiders and how healthy is Max Crosby. Haven't got much from the broadcast crew on that one either. He's been kept out on a lot of early down situations. And it's very unlike what the Raiders have done the entire season. And so I don't know if there's something going on there, but in terms of the pass rush, been very ineffective outside of that one play where they were able to get to Burrow inside the red zone and force the field goal. So it's a spot where the Bengals so far, they've really, in a way, had everything go right for them in a lot of cases on offense, but also defensively. It's the Raiders going out of bounds at the 2. On the other side, to me, the more interesting sort of team to talk about here, the Raiders all season, they're among the worst in red zone offense, red zone defense, and third down offense. And they're also the most penalized team in the NFL remaining from these playoff teams. And everything so far has really gone against them. They've had the false starts to kill drives. They've obviously had that play in the end zone we just talked about go against them. That kickoff return where they went out of bounds at the 2 was a bizarre sort of frantic play. Derek Carr has not entirely looked themselves, but then late in that first half, they drive down the field, they get the touchdown. Now, when we get to the numbers here, I'm going to point something out as I did with Crosby, but the big thing, again, I think the broadcast crew has sort of missed this. Mike Daniels went out on the second drive of the game for the Raiders, and he is the best Bengals defensive lineman, incredibly key when it comes to defending the run. And in the drives since he has been out, that's when we've seen Jacobs have a lot of success. So in-play props for the second half, if you can find Josh Jacobs over 90.5, it's gone up a yard and a half as we've been talking, 92.5. That middle is wide open for him to run into without Mike Daniels there. I know we're talking about Crosby not being on the field, but without Mike Daniels on that defensive line, very suspect to the run are the Cincinnati Bengals. And so that's a prop I think you definitely have to look at. But when we start to look at these second half lines and try circle around and find a pick for this, at this point, I have to lean towards the Las Vegas Raiders plus 1.5, which would put the adjusted bet at Raiders plus 8.5 for the game. And I know it was sort of going against what I was saying for the first half, but I'm looking at the Bengals, and although they're up 20-13, again, if you just sort of list off everything that has happened in the first half, it has all bounced the Bengals' way. And despite how rough the Raiders looked in that first quarter, that very much looked like a team that was coming off 4 consecutive weeks of essentially elimination games where they were down to the wire. Average winning margin on those 4 wins to finish the season was just 3 points. I mean, now you put them in that short week situation on the playoffs, difficult environment, first ever playoff start for Carr. That was very much a first quarter that I sort of was expecting, and I think many others were expecting from the Raiders as well. And the only reason that I'm sort of seeing this as kind of one-sided at the moment for Cincinnati, again, is Like, you list off everything that happened, and it was all going the way of the Cincinnati Bengals in that first half. So I'm not entirely sure that continues. So I do like the Raiders here, plus 1.5. That's an adjusted number now of 8.5 for the game. A number that I think is quite good in this spot, as well as Jacobs over 91.5 rushing yards. One more thing that I would sort of touch on before I let everyone get back to the couch. When you're looking at receiving props too, for the Las Vegas Raiders, I don't know if we are going to see a price ultimately for any of the backup running backs for the Raiders. But if you're looking at this, Josh Jacobs, his receiving total in play is at 20.5. And so that's, again, 11 yards difference. Now, I'm not necessarily advocating for this, but something that's happening is the Bengals are doing their best to chip and then double both Waller and Renfro at the line of scrimmage, which is why we've seen a lot of the Raiders' production go off of those two. And it's been to guys like Jones or Edwards, Deshaun Jackson, who's really useless unless he's running a go route in a straight line down the field. We saw him drop that pass, but the Bengals are really selling out to take those two guys away from the game. And so I think that's going to allow for production elsewhere for Carr in the passing game pretty comfortably, because once you go a little bit deeper within this Bengals secondary, the quality drops off pretty significantly. So it's just something I'll point out, but it's, if you're feeling one way or the other about one of those receivers, that's potentially something you can look into, because it's not going to take much for Carr under a little bit of pressure to dump off a pass to Jacobs potentially in the receiving game, because when you have that much attention paid to two guys elsewhere, there's a lot of space for him. But I think now with Daniels out, which is going to matter a ton, Jacobs is going to be used more effectively on the ground. So that's why I was hoping that we might potentially see one of the backup or like receiving backs for the Raiders with an in-play total, but we're not seeing that. We weren't seeing Moreau before the game, so we couldn't bet any of those angles. But Jacobs rushing would be the prop I go with, and then if you want to find something else, you can play off of it. But I do like the Raiders here. Second half plus 1.5, and then Jacobs rushing yards over 91.5 for the game. Two props that I will go with. Like and subscribe. Have to promote the show. If you're enjoying the info, if you're enjoying what we've been doing on Covers Daily or these halftime lives, there will be a halftime show every game throughout the playoffs, and we'll be doing Covers Daily each weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, you'll get the notification on Twitter as well when we go live. Raiders plus 1.5 for the second half. Jacobs over 91.5 yards rushing. Two bets to make for the second half. We'll see you guys in a few hours for Patriots Bills.